What's up, my guys? What's up, my girls? Welcome back to the Dani Flo Podcast. I'm your boy, Dani Flo, who mispronounces words from time to time. This is my podcast where I share my philosophy of life. Philosophy has a lot of depth, and I don't try to answer the question, what is life? What I do is I share what makes my life significant in hopes that maybe it will make your life significant too, what brings meaning and purpose and value to my life. Today, I'm joined by a longtime friend, Tano Diaz, who is going to share a little bit about his philosophy of life and his outlook on life. I'll let him tell you all about it. I'm excited to learn something new. Hopefully, you're excited as well. Tano, welcome to the Dani Flo Podcast. Thank you for being here. And why don't you? I know you a little bit, right, from high school,
Yeah.
but if somebody happens to stumble across this on the internet, what would you want them to know about you?
My name is Tano Diaz, as how Danny just said that we've been knowing us since high school. Let's see, what can I say? I'm just another wheelchair user that's pushing himself to be better each day.
So you mentioned that you're in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
How long have you been in a wheelchair?
Well, I'd be like, oh, I've been in it since birth, but no one comes out of the mom was born in a wheelchair. So that's kind of like nonsense with me. But I started using a wheelchair since I would say around 4. When I was 4 years old, that's when I got introduced into a wheelchair. And ever since, I've been using it. I mean, I'm 27, going on 28 now.
Okay, so for about 23 years. So, I mean, you were 4, and of course, everyone's memory is kind of faulty. You know, like if you think about it, we've forgotten more of our lives than what we remember, or at least that's the way that I think about it.
That is true.
So you were 4 years old back then, or I guess around what age did you start noticing, hey, not everyone is in a wheelchair?
I would say really early, to be honest. I mean, I would say like around when I was in kindergarten, first grade, around there, like when I would like, let's say, for example, while I was in elementary, you know how they have recess and stuff like that. I would see kids like jump on the slides, do this, do that, and I'll be like, then why can't I do that? I mean, it's not that I can't, but it's like it's 2 times tougher than an able-bodied person to do stuff. So I was like, I started realizing like, oh, like why am I different, or why am I just sitting down?
That's pretty early on, because you said that, so they started teaching you to be in a wheelchair around 4, and then typically people go to kindergarten around 5, first grade you're around 6, around kindergarten, first grade you started noticing at recess, like not everyone's in a wheelchair, and it's a lot easier for them to play during recess. That's pretty, I mean, I think that's pretty early on. So when you were that young, how did they explain to you why you were in a wheelchair? And of course, I mean, in the United States, there's like 330 million people. I don't know how many of those people are in a wheelchair and for how many different reasons, but I mean, just by observing, you could see that the majority are not in a wheelchair. So how did they kind of explain that to a kid, you know, because you try to explain to kids in a way that it clicks for them.
Yeah. Well, it's not that they explained. I mean, when I was younger, I mean, obviously, us, like with the condition that I have, or any other condition that deals with being in a wheelchair, or something that's more difficult, we go to checkups like every year, or every 2 years, or every 3 years, depending on what your condition is. So I would go to my hospitals up in Chicago, and when I was younger, I mean, I would see a lot of kids in wheelchairs, to be honest. So I'll be like, well, I'm not the only one, but outside of there, I would see people that were able to walk, kids that were able to walk. So it's like, Um, I would say I got into I got introduced into like why I'm in a wheelchair due to my checkups that I would go, because they would explain to me on like, okay, this is your condition, this is what you have, this is the cause that made you be in a wheelchair, stuff like that. So I got to like learn about it throughout the years. So like I honestly like till now, I mean, I can't say I know it 100% because science, I mean, it advances every time.
Yeah.
So like there's new stuff going on and whatnot. But in the early stages, well, I mean, by just by doctors telling me what I had, that's when I knew how to maneuver myself basically around it.
Okay, before we get into what your condition is, I like what you said about yourself, that you're a wheelchair user pushing yourself to be better every day. One of the questions that I have, that probably other people that are familiar with you probably have, is like, have you always had that mindset about your condition that you have now? I've known you since high school, and in my opinion, it's been 10 years, and I understand that a person can change, like,
Yeah.
Within a year or within 6 months. So 10 years, you've grown as a person. But back in high school, I never saw you as like a negative person. And now that we keep in touch through social media, I see you as like you have a positive mindset. Have you always had that?
Yeah, to be honest, yeah. I mean, I've always had it like in a positive way. So, I mean, there's always times that like, okay, you feel like down and stuff, whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I've always turned, I think, every negative comment that has gone towards me, or like said about my condition, I think I've always tried to set it like in a positive way. So like, I mean, there was times back then where I would feel like, damn, like what's going on? But then I'll be like, you know what, forget it. But nah, not really, not. I mean, I think I've been very positive since I was a kid.
What do you think that like positive mindset like comes from? Like what inspires you to like not look at your condition as like a negative way? Because I don't know anyone personally, but like I'm sure that maybe you've met people that they don't have your condition and they have like they've got like a negative mindset.
See, it's a good thing you brought that up. Okay, the reason that it made me like more positive out there and outgoing was okay, I used to play wheelchair basketball. Something that probably not many people know. I used to play basketball back when I was in middle school and part of high school. Well, until high school was over, I played wheelchair basketball, and I saw many people in wheelchairs and whatnot. They were out and about, and like in one way that made me the way I am. Also because there's other people with the same condition that I have that I used to see back then, that they were like really closed. Like they wouldn't open up. Like once if you brought the question up, like, oh, what happened to you? They'll be like, oh, get away. And not me. Me, it's more like if you ask me what I have, I'll gladly tell you. I'm a really open book, to be honest.
So it was just being around. So you played wheelchair basketball in middle school and high school, and your teammates, that kind of stuck to you, that they were positive. And then at the same time, you had an experience with other people in wheelchair that they weren't open about their conditions.
Yeah.
And you never wanted to be that way.
I didn't want to be that way. No. No. And then plus with the people that I played wheelchair basketball with, not everyone had the same condition that I had. There's different kinds, but the ones that had the same condition that I have, I would see them, and some of them were really closed. They were like really negative about themselves, and some of them were not. They were really positive about it and whatnot. So I took it the positive way.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, do you think it's a choice, a little bit of a choice to I mean, it's your condition is not a choice. And a person that is able-bodied that can walk, that's not their choice either. That's, I guess, that's biology or genetics. But once you realize I have a condition, do you think then you have a choice at how you look at life? Or do you think some people, like, no matter what, they can't get out of their negative mindset?
Well, wow, you asked me a really good question, man. I would say, and part of it is like their mindset. That if you let your mindset like take you down, obviously you're gonna be in the negative side. But if you let that, like, if you let the negativity and turn it around into a positive way, you're gonna make it. Your outcome is gonna be positive every time. So it's like it was a choice due to all the, how can I say it? Due to all the negative comments that were going towards me and to people in wheelchairs in general. I'll talk about like me personally. Like a lot of people would like, I would get rejected. I would get, like, let's say for example, when I was a kid, I mean, no one would hardly play with me because I wasn't able to do what they were doing. So it's like, in one way, yeah, it's a choice to turn into a positive person when you're in this condition.
Yeah, I mean, I find that stuff interesting because, like you said, like you have your condition and you know people with your condition, and both of you look at life differently, or look at least your condition differently. And then if you expand it a little bit, you know people in wheelchairs that are in a wheelchair for a different reason, and then some of those people have a positive mindset, and then other people have like a negative one. And so like the difference between that, because like we're all different, right? We're all different. Like
definitely
we're all different for sure. But then sometimes when you have something in common with someone else, you're like, okay, I have this in common with you, but like we look at things differently. You know, it's like, why is that?
That's the same way with us in the wheelchair community. That's how there's people that see it, their wheelchair life way different than other people. I mean, obviously it's common sense. I mean, no one has the same brain. And I would see some of them would be like, oh, like, I don't care if I get rejected, blah, blah, this and that. That's me. I don't care. I mean, throughout the times, I've started to not care, to be honest. It's like, okay, whatever, you reject me. But other people, once they get rejected, they take it more. And that's what makes them get even more negative.
Yeah, so if you start going down that road, it's hard to like
to even go to the other side.
All right, so in your own words, what is your condition?
Well, my condition, I mean, I say condition because I don't like calling it disability. I dislike the word with all my guts. Because I don't know, I just never liked the word disability because it makes you feel like you're useless. So every time when I be like, oh, what's your disability? My condition? Yeah, well, my condition is spina bifida. Spina bifida is when you're lower. It depends because there's 3 different kinds of spina bifidas. One of them is like it's hidden, so that person is able to walk. Then the other one is like you could still walk, but not as much. And then the level that I have is where I'm paralyzed from my knee down. So I have a scar in my back. Like when I was born, my back was open. So they had to take out, they had to sew it back in, but all the fluids that got spread out didn't make it to have enough, how can I say, like enough strength in my legs. So that's what caused me to be in a wheelchair, which I used to walk, but with braces. I used to wear braces, but they were like all the way to up here. Back when I was like in, I would say middle school. Yeah, back when I was in middle school, I stopped using them because, you know what? I told the doctor, I'm like, you know what? I move way faster being in a wheelchair than using my walker. So ever since, I just been using the wheelchair all the time.
Okay, so you got interest. So there's 3 kinds of spina bifida. Spend a little bit of time on what do you mean by it's hidden? What does that mean? The first
Okay,
kind.
so it's Spina Bifida occulta. It's okay. So let's your back. I think when I last researched it, your back. That person that has Spina Bifida occulta, their back is like a little bump, like a little bump, but you could barely see it. But they have a lot of back problems.
Oh.
But they're still able to walk.
Okay.
The second one, it's kind of similar to the first one, but it's like they're able to walk, but I think they get tired like right away. So like that they have to be either in a wheelchair or walking. So like depends on what they are. And then with mine, we stay in a wheelchair. But some of them are paralyzed from the waist down, and other ones are just paralyzed from like knee down. And that's me. I'm paralyzed from my knee down.
And so you said when you were born, your back was open.
Yeah, my lower back.
And you that didn't cause your legs to gain the strength that it needed to be able to walk. And so what did they put in your back?
They just sewed basically my back. My whole back is basically
they just sewed it. And so so since, is it possible to develop like spina bifida later in life, or is it something that you're born with that happens like before you're born?
Well, once you're born with it, like if it gets like caught like right off the bat, like you're with it. But no, I don't think you can develop it throughout like when you're growing up. So I think it's like once you're born.
So it's not like something that, like, for example, like if you were born being able to walk and then there was like a tragic accident, it'd be like, oh, it's
no.
It'd be, so it's just something that you're.
It's just once you're born with it.
Okay. So is it something that is like inherited through just the combination of like genes?
No. That's one thing that like once I was growing up, I checked, like I did my researches, I asked my doctor. No, it's not genetics. It's not. So it's like if I ever, let's say for example, if I ever get married or have a kid, he doesn't have no chances at all to have spina bifida.
Oh, okay.
So it's like it's a really low percentage, like really low that your like your kid or your daughter or whatnot will have it.
Okay.
So it's not genetic. It's not like, oh, I might have a cousin that's later on gonna be with spina bifida. No, it's not.
Okay, that makes sense. So you said that like growing up, like you asked your like doctors about this, and that growing up, like as best they could, they would explain like why you were in a wheelchair and other people weren't. Like what kind of research have you done like on your own? Like do you feel like in doing research about like spina bifida, like do you think you've learned like more about yourself?
Yeah, I've learned more about myself, to be honest, because I mean, once I like at the times that I've researched it, there's different things that your body deals with it and whatnot. So it's like once I research it, like there's some stuff that might come up like, oh, like that happened to me, or I feel that. So down the road, I'm like learning more and more of what my body tells me with my condition that I have. But I mean, honestly, I'm gonna be straight up honest. I sometimes even don't even search about it, because I mean, I've been in my wheelchair ever since I was a kid. I've had this condition ever since I was a kid, so I know what's the pros and cons about it.
That makes sense. So like when you were talking about how at recess you noticed that like you couldn't do you started to say that, and then you were like, well, I can do them, it's just twice as hard. Like what are some examples? Yeah. So like I mean, but that's like I feel like that's kind of a mindset too, because you're not like, it's not that I can't do it, it's that I've got to work harder to be able to do it. Or you know what I mean? Like some people might be like, nah, I just can't do that, I'm in a wheelchair. But you're like, I can do it, it's going to be harder. So like what are some examples of that? Like what do you think like able-bodied people like take for granted? I guess that's two questions. So what's an example of something that's like harder for you to do than an able-bodied person? And then we'll go back to the other question.
Oh, okay. Well, what the harder part is, I would say, let's say, there's so many of them, to be honest. Let's say, for example, if I go to the grocery store, I can't get something from the very top aisle.
Yeah.
I have to ask someone, or either one, ask someone, or at least grab one of those, what's that thing called? They have like the two.
Like a claw?
Like a clipper?
Yeah.
Like those little clipper thingies, and you just have to grab it from very top. And then you just see, and then you just see, obviously, able-bodied people just grabbing like nothing.
Yeah.
And us, we have to work for it. We have to like reach it.
Or you've got to use a tool. You've got to either, you've got to work for it, or you've got to use a tool, or you've got to ask. So that is harder because like some people, like, what if you're antisocial? You don't want to ask. Yeah. Or what if you don't have a tool? Or what if, I don't know, like what if it's beyond your reach, even if you're like stretching out? So, all right. So that's a good example. So then like, what do you think that like, or what do you think is the number one thing that able-bodied people take for granted that in your experience, like you've seen, like even if it's like with me, like what would you be like, Danny, like this thing is easy for you and you take that for granted because for somebody like me it's harder?
Usually, I mean, I know sometimes being sarcastic and whatnot, but sometimes like people do say like straight up, they'll be like, oh, like I gotta walk from here to all the way over there, or oh, I gotta go down the stairs, or this and that, or oh, I gotta carry something from here to over there. And it's like, I mean, sometimes, I mean, yeah, you could take it in a sarcastic way, because I mean, all of us in ourselves, we're lazy. Yeah, I'm even lazy too sometimes. I'm like, man, I wish someone could just push me, but no. Yeah. But sometimes I'm like, man, I'm like, if only you could. I was like, when I hear that, I'll be like, man, if you could only witness one day, just one day, being in a wheelchair, your mindset will be different.
Yeah, like you wouldn't like in the cases where you're being serious, you wouldn't say that anymore. Like if you're just being sarcastic and like lazy, that's one thing. But like if you seriously don't want to go downstairs to get something, it's like, well, if you were in a wheelchair for a day, maybe you wouldn't.
You'll change your perspective.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like.
Yeah. So like you talked a little bit about how like if you were to have like a kid that he probably wouldn't have spina bifida, what is like the most common reason that people end up in a wheelchair? Do you know?
Like with the condition that I have, or like in general?
Like in general, like because you mentioned that when you used to play basketball in middle school and in high school, that like not everyone on the team had spina bifida. Everyone on the team was in a wheelchair because of the wheelchair leg.
They had different conditions. Yeah. Well, some of them they had let's see what conditions I could bring up right off the top of my head. Some of them had cerebral palsies. Other ones they might have had gotten their leg amputee for like any certain disease they had or whatnot. Others might have had in a car accident. Other people might have that I've came across with were due to gun violence. It depends. I mean, honestly, it depends on their cases, on everyone's case. Yeah. Also, there were people that have had I would say. I knew one of them that had cancer, but he survived it. So he got his leg, and like I think it's right, one of his legs. I don't remember, but it was a long time ago. One of his legs was cut off due to that. So he's in a wheelchair, but he's able to walk because he uses like those amputee legs ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he's able to walk, but he uses more a wheelchair, I would say.
Do you think he was kind of like you, because you said that you used to wear braces like almost up to your neck until you were in middle school, and you were like, you know what, I can move faster in a wheelchair, so I rather do the
Yeah,
wheelchair. Is he
there,
kind of like that?
there. I would say yeah, because it's like, well, like even though he can still use his legs,
Mm-hmm.
he moves around way more faster in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that I know too that they have the same condition I have, but they still use the braces. But the braces, it depends on the person. It's like some of them have them all the way up here. Some of them just might have it just from the waist down. So it
Mm-hmm.
just depends. It just depends on their situation, to be honest.
So like, I see that on Instagram that you hit the gym,
Yeah.
and you like talked a little bit about being in the basketball league in middle school and like high school. Like, why is that important to you? Like, because like, I mean, not everyone in a wheelchair wants to play a sport, right? Like, not everyone in a wheelchair wants to
No.
go to the gym. You know what I mean? Like, not everyone not everyone wants to be like, maybe a person like has the brace and they know I can move faster in a wheelchair, but I don't want to move faster. Like, I'm good just with my brace. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why is that important to you?
Well, funny story is that I actually got introduced to wheelchair basketball. I didn't even know. Like back when I was a little kid, I mean, I was so how can I say it? I was somewhat closed, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know sports for wheelchair people existed.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
like until when I remember I was back in elementary when at that case they would go like a lot of like social workers or whatnot. They would go to check up on kids that had a certain condition, like the ones that were in special ed, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I was never in special ed. I've always taken regular classes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the social workers would go to special ed classes, and then they would have some kids that were in regular classes but had a certain condition.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember at that moment my caseworker, she told me, she was like, oh, there's sports for people in wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, is there? And she's like, yeah. So later on, she brought like a booklet. I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was a big booklet, to be honest. It was like that thick at that moment. Like back then they were like that thick. Now they're like little templates basically.
Mm-hmm.
But back then they were big old books. And I started like looking at them. They had rugby, they had softball, they had what's that one? Not polo, but it's kind of like polo, but they use like a
Cricket?
they had cricket.
With
Yeah,
like
they
a
had cricket.
mallet, no? It's like a
Yeah,
mallet, yeah.
yeah, they had cricket. They even had football. I tried football, but the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that we do it in the cement. Just imagine flipping over.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I got introduced to basketball, and then I remember I told my social worker, I was like, I want to do basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So she signed me up, and then later on, she called my parents. Oh, take them to where they're gonna practice at. And I was like, okay, let's go. I was like all happy and stuff. I was a little kid. I was basically 9 years old when I
Right.
started playing basketball. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we went. Yeah, I saw a whole bunch of people in wheelchairs, man, playing basketball. I'm like, oh, this is fun. So afterwards, I started I was playing. I got
Mm-hmm.
in it. Fun part was we got to travel all over. That was the fun part for me.
So like, what do you mean travel all over? Like all over the United States, or did you go to different
Yeah,
countries too?
different states, man, in the U.S.
What was the best like state that you went to?
I would say from the best ones at that moment, back when I used to play, I would say Omaha, Nebraska.
Why that one?
I don't know, like the atmosphere was it was so crazy. Like once you were like where we played at, it was like it looked like it was basically middle of nowhere, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't. So like you would go outside like out of the stadium that we were at, and you would look to your left, and it was like nothing but pure desert. And then you look over here, city. So I was like, man, and then the stadium was huge. So it's like I felt like I was like in some type of Olympics, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
then
half of
having
it was like
the city,
and then half of
and
it
then
was
like pure desert, like mountains and stuff. So
mm-hmm.
it looked pretty cool, but it felt like we were in the middle of nowhere, but we were not.
Right.
So that was a pretty cool
that
experience.
is cool. So you got introduced into wheelchair basketball because you had a social worker. Do most people in wheelchairs get a social worker, or how does that work?
During when they're in school.
Mm-hmm.
When they're in school, like it's in middle school, elementary, middle school, and high school. Once you're out of high school, you're on your own.
Right.
But throughout those times, it's like you get a social worker to at least help you to get through things at school or stuff like that, like just school wise. But apparently, she had things to do with the park district, I would say. Mm-hmm. So she introduced me to basketball. Then I tried to introduce other people into basketball. Some people, two people, I'm not saying names. They were like, "No, I'm not interested in basketball." Okay.
Yeah.
But usually a social worker is like usually for schools.
So do you think that most people in wheelchairs, do they not get introduced to wheelchair sports? Does it just depend on the social worker?
No, now they do get introduced because there's so many. It's so many things like on social media. Mm-hmm. There's more opportunities back then. Back then was like more like if you knew someone that was in a sport, tell the other person at least so they could know. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, oh, I'll go up on Google, search up wheelchair basketball, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff. So it's like it's much easier now than how it was back then.
That's wild. Like because you're not even that. I mean, are we the same age? We were the same.
I'm gonna be 28.
Yeah, we're the same. I'm 28 right now. I'm gonna be 29 in March. Don't forget.
Literally, I'm gonna be in January.
You're gonna be 28. Okay, yeah. I won't forget. I probably will.
I think I remember yours, but I'm not. I know it's in March, but I'm not sure what day. But I remember yours.
So besides wheelchair basketball, like what do you think is like the coolest like wheelchair like sport or activity that people probably don't know about? Because you mentioned a lot. You mentioned that rugby, that's wild. And then because like rugby is without like protection, and then football you got the helmet and like the pads and stuff like that. Like which one do you think is like the coolest?
Besides basketball?
Yeah, besides basketball.
I would say rugby because it's more intense.
Yeah.
And like they take hits like literally. Like I've watched games that have been like when I used to play back in the day. I would watch games that had rugby, like on the other side of the court or whatever. You would literally hear the chair slam.
And what did the people think? Were they like, "This is wild"? Or
everyone was going insane. Like they were going nuts. That's like literally, it's like with us, like in basketball, a lot of people think it's like whatever. No, but it's rough.
Yeah,
like it's rough. Like if I would say how many blisters or open skin that I've had throughout the time that I played, it's countless. Mm-hmm. And then how many times I flipped over. You flip over in basketball, and it's like you have to get back up. Like if you don't get up, you're out. You're out.
Like your team will start losing.
Yeah, because you gotta be on pace. Like
yeah. So then this is what you would do. Like so then after high school, when you stop playing like wheelchair basketball, like what keeps you going to like the gym? Like why is that important to you?
Because with the condition that I have, there's a myth that they say that someone with Spina Bifida, throughout the years, they end up being obese. So it's like obviously we can't move as an able-bodied person as much. So it's obviously we have to constantly be working out on something, at least moving, because if we don't, be like there's chances that you could be obese, but not in my case.
So is it just because you don't burn as much calories as an able person because you're not, like the person that complains, they have to walk downstairs and you don't, or they have to walk all the way across like the parking lot. So I guess your calories are like cut,
less.
Yeah, less. So, okay.
Because I mean, us, we take literally elevators.
Yeah.
And so
I take elevators
don't,
too.
I mean, there's no problem with that. I mean, everybody does, but I'm saying like, it's a difference. Like you take upstairs, you're burning calories. You're going up the elevator, you're not burning no calories.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever seen that movie? You ever seen that movie? Well, do you like Adam Sandler? Some people don't like it. So like,
who doesn't?
There's people who don't like Adam Sandler. So he makes decent movies. Like one of the cool things that I've heard about Adam Sandler is that he started like his own company to like help his friends like be actors. Like he had a bunch of friends that wanted to be like actors. And like, and if you notice, like a lot of his movies have the same people.
Yeah.
Like I guess that's why.
Yeah, I've noticed.
I think that's super cool.
That's cool because he's like in some way he's not being, how can I say, he's not trying to put different people. He always wants to have the same people and like make them be like, oh, you want to be something in life, like I'm gonna have you constantly, like, so they could be recognized more and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so have you seen the movie Just Go With It?
Yeah.
With Jennifer Aniston, and they pretend to be married because like, so do you remember the part where like she's talked about how like, oh, I always take the stairs because it like that's the way that I stay fit or something like that.
Yeah.
And then like there's the scene where they like go swimming, and I think in that scene is when like the character that Adam Sandler plays is like realizing that he has feelings for her, and he says something about like, oh man, maybe there is something about taking the stairs, and the son is like, don't believe her, she takes spin classes like nobody's business.
I remember that part.
Yeah,
that part was funny.
Part. Okay, so like you, I guess in a sense you don't want to be like, I guess the typical person in a wheelchair that might gain weight because they're not able to burn as much calories. Yeah. A party person. Okay, that makes sense. Is there anything else, or like what do you think is the number? I just thought of this. Do you think is the number one misconception about spina bifida?
That they don't ask before, they don't ask, and they go jump into like conclusions right away. Like I've had multiple times that I've come across people that be like, they don't even ask me like what I have. They'll be like, oh, poor guy, like he might have get ran over, or he got into like some gun violence. No, like ask first before you even know the situation, instead of jumping to conclusion.
Yeah, so people see wheelchair, oh, he's paralyzed because he was in an accident,
Yeah.
Somebody shot him or somebody ran him over.
That's like the first thing that pops up in their mind.
So it's just better to be like it's better. I mean, what do you call it? I mean, it's hard for a person not to notice the wheelchair, right? So it's better just to ask like, hey, why are you in it? I mean, does that happen a lot? Do people, or do most people just kind of like wave and go about their day? Or like,
some people do, like they'll be like, oh, like whatever. But there's other people like they are really curious about it and like they want to know. So they'll go up to me and they'll ask me like, hey, what happened, or why are you in a wheelchair? And then I'll just tell them what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's like with this wheelchair community, it's everything's misunderstood by the able-bodied people. Put it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So since I've been following you on Instagram for a while, whenever Spina Bifida month comes up, you post about it. What month is that?
That's in October.
So in October, so it's December right now. It's been a couple months. So what is the focus on in October for Spina Bifida? Just to raise awareness?
It's to raise awareness, and also, I mean, it's basically to raise awareness, but mostly people, us, like in the Spina Bifida world, we use it more to like to show ourselves like, hey, like, we're just another person. The only difference is that we're in a wheelchair, and we do things twice as hard as someone else. But basically, it's just more like, let us like to express ourselves. That's what it, but it mostly is because of to raise awareness.
So so when you were in like the basketball for the wheelchair, like, was that like the first time that you had like met other people with the same condition of you, or like, because you said you had a social worker elementary, middle school, and high school, or like, did your social worker introduce you with other people as the same condition of you, or like, when did you start connecting? Because you just said Spina Bifida month is like, with people with spina bifida, we kind of like express ourselves and are like, oh, we're just the same as an able-bodied person. Like, when did you start connecting with other people that have spina bifida?
Well, like I mentioned earlier in the pod, when I used to go up to Chicago, I would see other people in wheelchairs, like other kids.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And whatnot. But I never knew some of them had spina bifida. Like I said, there's different kinds of conditions that could lead you into a wheelchair, but most of them did have spina bifida because that was like a clinic just focused on people with spina bifida. But me back then, I wouldn't know. I was young. I was really little. But when I started to get more like into more knowledge about my condition, it was more because when I got introduced to basketball, and then I got to like talk with people that have spina bifida as well. So like I got to like witness like their pros and cons and my pros and cons. So like it's a helpful thing between one and another one. It's like he might do something that I can't do, and I could just get it off of him and be like, oh, I'm gonna try it out. He might not do something that I can do. So it's like, it's more like into the spina bifida where it's like, you gotta communicate to actually know more about your own self too.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I mean, like, how, like, as now that you're older, because like you said, when you were younger, like, you didn't, like, you saw, oh, like, there's other kids in wheelchairs, but like, you weren't thinking, oh, they have the same condition as me. Like, now that you're like older and you realize, right, that you can learn from, like, how important is that, like, to you? Do you think, like most people that have spina bifida should like be with other people that, or not be with, but like know other people with spina bifida? Because you were like it kind of helped me learn a little bit about myself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, because like I mentioned, you could get off, you could try something new that the other person knows how to do, but you can't. So in one way, it's helpful to be in that same community because you're learning more, you're getting the pros and cons of your condition. So it's like, in my point of view, it's the best.
That's
to
awesome.
Be with someone else, like to communicate.
So, like, what's it like having spina bifida, but like also being like Hispanic? You know what I mean? Because like, I feel like a lot of Hispanics don't know a lot about. I feel like we know, like, it's kind of because you were talking about the spina bifida world, right? And like, in a way, all of us live in like our little own world, you know, and we never like go outside of that, you know, like.
I mean, true.
I mean, for example, like when we were in high school and I was in like banda, like my life was banda. Like I never went to like sport. I didn't get my driver's license until like a month before I turned 18. Like I you know, because you can get your permit at 16 and then you got to put in your hours and then you can take your test and like you can have your license like by the time you're like 16 if you take the class and or whatever. Like I was so focused on banda that like I forgot all about that. Like I never, but like now that I'm older, I feel like some people like still, as they're older, they never step outside of their
comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, you could basically say comfort zone, basically.
Yeah. Like, and I've noticed that Hispanics do that. Like there's for some reason there's like a good and a bad stereotype. Like sometimes the stereotype is like, oh, Hispanics are like lazy, but then sometimes the other stereotype is like, oh, Hispanics are really hard workers. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times like Hispanics, they're just like they're all about work. Like they get up,
Yeah, it is.
they go to work, they come home, they like have dinner, watch TV, whatever, they go to sleep, get up, go to work. Like that's their life, and
Like, they never
never
got out of there.
yeah, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah, I get you.
what's that like?
I mean, it's no difference, to be honest. I mean, how can I say? I mean, with me, it's basically, I mean, just get up, push, and get throughout the day. I mean, I gotta do what I gotta do. I mean, and then also with me being Hispanic, I mean, I think it's one of the best things ever.
Yeah, I love being Hispanic too.
I do too, man. I mean, you gotta love your culture. I mean, and then with the Hispanic and the wheelchair culture, it's also misunderstood because us, like the Hispanic culture, they use the word pobrecito.
Yeah.
When they feel bad about someone. And so I remember growing up, I would always hear, oh, pobrecito, es que está malo. Oh, pobrecito, he can't walk. Like, now that I'm older, I'm like, man, where the heck am I a pobrecito?
Right.
So it's like, it's kind of funny in one way, but the other way is like, it gets you thinking.
Yeah. So like, do you think that's one of the things that like should improve, right? That we shouldn't like in the Hispanic community, we shouldn't like look at a person with a not just spina bifida, but with any condition and
like
be like
in general.
Yeah, and be like, oh, pobre, like pobrecito, like. But yeah, you're right. Like, how does that translate? It kind of translates
like poor kid, or I don't know.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, like oh,
like
poor
that,
kid,
no?
he's in a wheelchair. You know what I mean? And like for anything, you know, like me, I'm like I don't have hair anymore. Like oh, poor guy, he went bald early.
It's like let's say when we will grow up, us in the Hispanic in our Hispanic culture, when we will fall or hit ourselves, like oh, pobrecito se cayó el niño or something. But others ones be like, oh, let him hit himself so he can learn.
So yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm a little bit that way. I'm just like so he can learn. Yeah, so I mean, basically what you're saying is just like the same. It's the same like within the like Hispanic community, and then just like in general, people just need to people don't know a lot about spina bifida, and so it's kind of the same. I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So that's why it's misunderstood.
Yeah, it's just misunderstood. So, you recently started a brand.
Yes.
And it's called the Inspire
Dayz.
Is that a little bit of like a play on your last name?
Yes.
Because your last name is Diaz.
My last name is Diaz, and in English is Dayz.
So how long have you been thinking about starting a brand?
It's been in the process for a good while. It's just that I just couldn't find the right way to name it, or I would have honestly, the only word that I had in mind right off the bat was inspired. That was the main focus of it. So later on, I was like, man, I would just put certain words like that would bring like inspiration, but incorporate inspire on it, but just they wouldn't make sense. I'm like, man. I'm like, no. I'm like, and then like what I had in mind of like the meaning behind it, what I was trying to like put out, it wasn't making sense with the words that I was putting. So I was like, no. So I was finding until I came up with the Inspire Dayz. That's when I was like, bingo, that's it.
That's the one. So what is the meaning of it for you? And like, what do you want people to like, when people see the brand, the Inspire Dayz, what do you want people to like think of?
That every day, once you wake up, it's an inspiration to be a better person than you were the day before. Do something that you were coming up with, do it better. come up with new stuff, stay with a positive mindset, and just keep pushing to do the best you can and be the best person you were the day before.
And like, when did you notice that that was like important to you? Because I feel like sometimes like you do something for a long time and you don't like necessarily notice that you're like doing it. And then like when you notice that you're doing it, you don't even know how to put it into like words. Like you were talking about, like I was thinking about starting a brand for a long time. I knew I wanted it to have Inspire in it, but I just didn't know I didn't know how to put it into words. Like, when did you notice that like it was important to you to like be better every day, or try to be better every day, and to keep pushing?
With basically with how can I say it? Just basically like with all the like the negativity that goes on or whatnot, that's what made me say like, okay, let me put out something, or let them know that like I mentioned, every day is a new day. It's an inspiration to be a better person, and just let the negativity out.
Yeah.
So that's what always was in my mind. Like I said earlier, I've always turned a negative comment to a positive outcome. So why not turn the brand into something positive than just a simple brand? Make a habit of meaning towards it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I mean, what's the long-term goal with the brand?
Keep pushing, man. Just getting new stuff out, and hopefully, I mean, with this, I mean, I just launched a mini documentary, like a mini documentary to my YouTube channel, which it's also the Inspire Dayz. So hopefully with that, come out with videos with like things that I can do, like or stuff like that. Like a lot of people have mentioned, like they have asked me, oh, how do you drive, or how do you maneuver yourself to certain places and stuff, or how do you do things? So it's like with that, it's just basically get out in like videos as well, like to show people, and then also show other wheelchair users how to do things. Because like I said, they might get something from my videos, be like, oh, let me try him transferring from, let's say, from the wheelchair to his car seat, or from the wheelchair to the bathtub or whatnot. Because there's people that they get in different ways. So in one way, I want to have the brand also in it, so like to show them that everything you could do, it could inspire someone, and then the other person can inspire you to be better.
That makes, so I mean, yeah, is that important to you to like help other, like not just people with spina bifida, but to help other people with like, especially like in wheelchairs, right? Because it sounds like throughout your life you've met people in a wheelchair that had a negative mindset, and you were like, man, it would be a lot better if you weren't that way.
Yep, that's basically the main thing.
So I mean, what you said you just did the mini docu-series, and then what do you're wearing one of your t-shirts. What do you have out right now? You've got the t-shirt.
This is just a sample of it that hopefully they'll be out real soon. So it's just on the left side, like a little small logo.
And then you've also got I think you've got hoodies.
I got the hoodies, yeah.
It is hoodie season.
Yeah, it is.
All right, Tano, thanks so much for helping us understand spina bifida a little bit better. I personally didn't know that there was 3 kinds. So that's really interesting. One that's kind of hidden, one that's kind of like an intermediate stage where they can walk, but just not for long periods of time. So maybe they have to be on a wheelchair sometimes they have to walk. And then it sounds like the spina bifida that you have, from the knee down, you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And then, but there's other people that it might be from the waist down.
Waist down.
Okay. And I find it really interesting that you said that a lot of people don't, both in the Hispanic community and just in general, don't understand spina bifida. and they just come up with conclusions. You know, in the Hispanic community, it's kind of like, oh, pobrecito, like algo like something happened to him, and
Yep.
just in the wider community, they're like, oh, wheelchair, must have been an accident. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just
So, and yeah, I mean, I personally do, especially when I see you like at the gym and stuff like that, because it's like you said, all of us are like lazy, and like me, I like lifting, but even me sometimes I'm like, I don't want to lift. You know what I mean?
see. I mean,
Or
don't
I
get
don't.
me wrong. I get like that too sometimes. But
Yeah,
I'm like, man, but it's like you got to do what you got to do.
you got to do. Yeah, and like you said, it's important to you because you don't burn as much calories as an able body person. So when I see like that you're at the gym, I'm like, well, if Tano can do it, then I can do it. And it sounds like that's what your brand is all about, like trying to get both people in wheelchairs and able bodied people to like to get inspiration.
Yep.
All right, man. Any
Most
final thoughts?
definitely. Nah, man. I mean, thank you for inviting me.
Of
And
course.
I know we've known us for a long time now.
That's
It was
true.
good.
Yeah.
It was good talking with you.
For the next 10, cheers to the next 10 years.
I know, right?
And give us your Instagram handle and your YouTube. That way I can put it on the
Uh,
bottom of the screen when I edit this.
I what my Instagram is Tano Diaz with 2 Z's. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you want to follow my brand, it's the Inspire Dayz. And then my YouTube channel is the Inspire Dayz, but with the letter Z on both
Okay.
my Instagram and my YouTube.
So Tano Diaz with 2 Z's, the Inspire Dayz, both on Instagram and on YouTube, and both on Instagram and YouTube. It's got a Z, Days.
Yeah, a Z. Yeah, a Z.
Okay. All right, man. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for inviting me, man.
All right, my guys and my girls. I hope that you enjoyed that episode with my friend Tano Diaz, who has spina bifida. He's had spina bifida since he was born. He taught us that there's 3 different kinds of spina bifida. He's got the third kind where he's paralyzed from the knee down. The biggest thing is that people just kind of draw their own conclusions when they see him in a wheelchair. And as far as for him, he would rather have you ask, hey, why are you in a wheelchair? And so I hope that was very informative. I hope that his outlook on life was also very, I think he would want it to be inspirational, which is why he started his brand, the Inspire Dayz, which is a play on his last name, Diaz. So if you liked this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, make sure you follow the podcast for more episodes like this, or subscribe to the podcast, whatever you need to do on your podcast app to stay up to date. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell. That way YouTube notifies you when I upload a new episode, which right now I'm trying to upload a new episode every Tuesday morning, both on YouTube and on all of the podcast applications. And just as importantly as following and subscribing on your favorite podcast app and on here on YouTube, is please share this with someone that you know. Sharing the video and the podcast episode helps our philosophy of life party grow, if you will, and we can keep connecting. And as Tano was saying, we can draw inspiration from one another. So please share it. And if you want to do something even cooler than that, the link to support the Dani Flo podcast, podcast video, right? Because I release this as a video and then I also release it as a podcast. That is always in the description of the video and in the episode notes on your favorite podcast app. So if you have an extra $3, $5, $10 a month and you want to help me out with a monthly donation so that I can invest it in the podcast and improve the quality of the podcast, I very much appreciate it. That would be awesome. I'm a person that loves words and I don't even know how to put that into words. So subscribe, follow the podcast if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, hit the bell if you're watching on YouTube so that you're notified every week when I upload a YouTube video, make sure you share this video to help our Dani Flo Podcast party grow. And if you want to do something super cool for your boy, then help me out with a monthly donation so that I can invest it in the podcast and make it better. And until the next time, my guys and my girls, aka my dear and beloved Dani Flo, remember what Venerable Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen taught us: your life is worth living. Love you, my guys and my girls. Bye.